Hey everyone, we are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
You just watched Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback who ever lived, sit down and personally explain why a sixth-round pick from Bowling Green became one of the most clutch receivers in a championship run. 1 second on the clock. Lambeau Field. Aaron Rodgers watching from the sideline. And this little-known speedster from a Chicago suburb just torched Green Bay's secondary for a 39-yard touchdown to end the half. That's not a footnote in NFL history. That's a defining moment. And the man who made it happen? He just showed up to Hollis Hall, ran some routes, turned every head in the building, and walked out with a contract. That's right, Scotty Miller is a Chicago Bear. What is going on, everybody? I'm Fave, and this is Favs, the only channel covering NFL moves with zero filter, zero corporate spin, and absolutely zero chill. Let's get into it. Now, before we paint the full picture here, I want you to understand something about this signing that most of the mainstream coverage is going to completely sleep on. This isn't just some random warm body the Chicago Bears threw onto the roster because they needed a number to hit 88 on the depth chart. There are layers to this story. There's drama. There's history. There's a homecoming. There are coaching connections that go all the way back to one of the most dominant Super Bowl runs of the last decade. And there is a receiver room in Chicago that, underneath that flashy top end, has some serious questions that need answering before September. Scotty Miller is the answer to at least one of those questions, and the story of how he got here is worth telling. So let's go back to the beginning. According to ESPN and Pro Football Reference, Scotty Miller was selected by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 6th round of the 2019 NFL Draft out of Bowling Green. 6th round. That's the round where teams are basically spinning a wheel and hoping something sticks. Most 6th-round picks don't make it past their first training camp. They become practice squad lifers, or they're out of the league entirely inside 3 years. Scotty Miller had different plans. He made the 53 immediately, and then in year 2, with Tom Brady coming to Tampa Bay and turning the whole franchise upside down, Miller became a legitimate weapon. 33 receptions, 501 yards, 3 touchdowns. For a guy who was never supposed to be anything more than a gadget piece, those are real numbers. As reported by Pro Football Reference, Miller averaged over 15 yards per reception that season. 15 yards per catch. Let that sink in for a second. That's not a slot possession guy. That's a legitimate vertical threat, making life miserable for cornerbacks every single week. And then came the postseason. The Buccaneers went on arguably the most incredible championship run the league has seen in the modern era, beating 3 straight road games in the playoffs before the Super Bowl, something that had never been done before in NFL history. And in the NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers, with 1 second left on the clock in the first half, Bruce Arians didn't kneel the ball. He didn't take a knee and go into the locker room up a few points. He called a shot, Brady took the snap, looked left to buy time, and launched a moonball to the end zone. And Scotty Miller, all 5'11", 175 pounds of him, ran past Packers cornerback Kevin King like he was standing still and hauled in a 39-yard touchdown pass to push Tampa's lead to 21-10 at halftime. As documented by Wikipedia and multiple NFL media outlets, that play essentially broke the Packers' spirit. Green Bay never fully recovered. The Buccaneers were Super Bowl bound. Fave's personal take? Kevin King still wakes up in cold sweats thinking about that play. That's not shade. That's just a fact of life when you get torched on the biggest stage. Now flash forward 5 years. Miller went to Atlanta for 1 season, then spent the past 2 years in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. As reported by NBC Chicago and NBC Sports, he appeared in 13 games with Pittsburgh last season, recording 9 catches for 62 yards. 9 catches, 62 yards. That is a man fighting for a roster spot, grinding, staying ready, trying to get a foothold back into a league that tends to forget you the moment your production dips. It's the kind of stretch that would make most players hang up their cleats and call it a career. But here's the thing about Scotty Miller that the raw stats don't capture. He's still only 28 years old. 28. In NFL years, for a wide receiver, that's not old. That's prime. That's a guy who still has real football left in him. And the reason the production dipped has a lot to do with circumstance, which is something I'll get into in just a minute. So what happened this weekend? According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, who broke the news via his agents Drew Rosenhaus and Robert Bailey, the Chicago Bears invited Miller to participate in their rookie minicamp as a veteran tryout. And if you've never heard of a veteran minicamp tryout, here's what it is. A team gives a free agent player the opportunity to practice with the rookies and undrafted free agents over a weekend, essentially an extended audition. before deciding whether or not to sign them. It's a hustle move for the player. You're essentially saying, put me on the field, watch me work, and then tell me I'm not worth a contract. And according to multiple reports including Sports Illustrated and A to Z Sports, Miller didn't just show up and blend in. He was making plays. He was turning heads. He caught a deep ball on the first day of practice. He was the most experienced player on that field by a country mile. And he was out there showing out like he had something to prove. Which frankly, he does. And here's where head coach Ben Johnson comes in, because his reaction to Miller in the days leading up to this signing tells you everything about why this move made sense. As reported by Sports Illustrated, when Johnson was asked about Miller ahead of minicamp, he said, and I'm paraphrasing here to keep it clean for a voiceover, that from afar, Miller brings a speed and quickness element that has caught his attention, and that he is certainly very intrigued. Very intrigued. That's Ben Johnson speak for this guy can play, and I want a closer look. Ben Johnson is not a coach who throws empty compliments around. He is one of the most analytically sharp offensive minds in the entire NFL. When he says he's intrigued, you'd better believe there's a football reason behind it. And that football reason is Miller's 44 speed and his ability to work at multiple levels of the route tree, particularly as a vertical separator and a deep ball threat. Fave's personal opinion? In Ben Johnson's system, a system built on spacing, precision, and getting the ball to athletes in open space, a guy with Scotty Miller's speed profile is dangerous even as the fifth or sixth option, because all it takes is one blown coverage, and he's already gone. Now let's talk about the Chicago Bears wide receiver room, because this is where things get genuinely interesting and where the Scotty Miller signing goes from nice little depth move to this was absolutely necessary. As reported by Windy City Gridiron and Windy City, the Bears traded away DJ Moore to the Buffalo Bills this offseason. Moore had been the veteran anchor of this receiver room for 3 years, the guy you could count on for 50 or 60 catches, real consistent production, the kind of reliability that an offense needs when the young guys are still figuring things out. He's gone. Olamide Zach Shows is gone too. So suddenly this room, which looks good on paper at the top with Rome Odunze and Luther Burden, gets very thin very quickly once you move past those two names. Let's run through it. As noted by the RotoWire depth chart and various Chicago beat reporters ahead of minicamp, the Bears had Odunze and Burden at the top. Those two are locked in, not going anywhere. Legitimate NFL starters. Then, you've got Khalif Raymond, who, as Yahoo Sports points out, has been in the league since 2016 mostly as a depth and special teams piece, though he did have his best football working alongside Ben Johnson in Detroit. Then you've got third-round draft pick Xavion Thomas out of LSU, who, as multiple outlets including the Windy City note, is viewed by most analysts as a gadget player and field stretcher, until he proves he can handle more. And then, and this is where it falls off a cliff, you've got Jade Walker, Maurice Alexander, J.P. Richardson, and a collection of undrafted free agents including Amari Kelly and Squirrel White. As reported by the Chicago Tribune and GM Today, Alexander played exactly one offensive snap during the entire 2025 regular season. 1. Richardson was a practice squad fixture, and the undrafted guys are unknowns. Full stop. So when Ben Johnson says he's intrigued by adding speed and depth at receiver, he's not running a PR campaign. He's describing a genuine roster need. And Scotty Miller, a man who has played in 93 career NFL games across 7 seasons, represents something that most of those other depth options simply cannot offer. Real, proven, been-in-the-fire NFL experience. As reported by Yahoo Sports, Miller still averages a very respectable 12.3 yards per reception across his career. That's not a possession guy. That's a player who can go up the seam, run a post, take the top off coverage. In an 11 personnel package where the Bears need a legitimate third option in the passing game, Miller is a credible answer. Fave's opinion? Half these analysts are completely underrating this signing. They keep writing it up as a depth move, like that's a dismissive thing to say. Depth is what wins football games in November and December, when somebody tears their ACL and you need a real professional to step in. Ask any head coach in the league, they will all tell you the same thing. But here's the part of the story that most people aren't even touching, and it's the part that Fave finds genuinely fascinating from a football intelligence standpoint. The reason Scotty Miller's production cratered after that incredible 2020 season isn't just bad luck or age or general decline. It's coaching, it's system, it's relationships. As reported by Yahoo Sports and Pro Football Rumors, Miller's time in Tampa Bay overlapped with the tenure of Antoine Randall L. as an offensive assistant for the Buccaneers. Randall L., for those who don't remember, was himself a former NFL wide receiver, a speedy, multidimensional weapon who played for over a decade. He understands what it means to be a smaller, faster receiver trying to create separation in a league full of 6-foot, 210-pound corners. He coached Miller in Tampa from 2019 through 2020. And guess where Antoine Randall L. is now? He is the wide receivers coach for the Chicago Bears. The same man who was on the sideline during Miller's best football is now the man who will be coaching him up at Hallis Hall this summer. As Pro Football Rumors specifically noted, this signing represents a reunion between Miller and Randall L. that both parties clearly saw value in. And as Yahoo Sports pointed out, more than half of Miller's entire career receiving yardage, 701 yards out of 1,216 total, came during those 2 seasons when Randall L. was in his ear. The correlation is not subtle. The connection is real. Fave's personal read? Antoine Randall L. might have made a phone call that made this happen. That's just how NFL football works. The league is smaller than you think. The relationships are everything. And when a coach believes in a player, that player has a chance to remind everybody why they were drafted in the first place. And now, on top of the Randall L. reunion, there's the Ben Johnson factor. Because the other coaching connection mentioned by Chicago Bears Now and multiple local beat reporters is that Bears receivers coach Andrew Janocko, a name some of you might recognize from the Detroit Lions, was also part of the Tampa Bay staff during Miller's peak years, including that Super Bowl run in 2020. So now you've got 2 coaches on Ben Johnson's staff who have first-hand knowledge of what Scotty Miller can do when he's in the right environment, with the right coaching, and the right scheme. That is not a coincidence. That is a deliberate football decision. When you are building a receiver room and you have coaches who know exactly how to deploy a specific type of player, you go out and you get that player. The Bears did exactly that. Now I want to take a moment and talk about something that Fave thinks deserves way more attention than it's getting in the national coverage. And that's the local angle on this whole story. Because Scotty Miller is not just some journeyman free agent who happened to land in Chicago. As reported by the Chicago Sun-Times and Yahoo Sports, Miller is from Barrington, Illinois. Barrington, that is 45 minutes outside of the city. He grew up in the Chicagoland area. He went to Barrington High School. He grew up as a Bears fan. And according to Yahoo Sports, he is returning home to play for his hometown team in what is shaping up to be one of the more genuinely compelling storylines of the Bears' 2026 offseason. Think about what that means psychologically for a player who has spent 7 years bouncing from Tampa to Atlanta to Pittsburgh, fighting for every snap, never quite getting back to that peak he hit during the Super Bowl run. And now you get to come home. You get to play in front of the people who watched you grow up. You get to suit up for the Bears with a coaching staff that believes in you, in a system built for your skill set, with a head coach who is openly excited about what you bring to the table. If you're a football fan and that story doesn't move you even a little bit, I don't know what to tell you. This is the stuff that great sports narratives are made of. And look, let's be real about what this signing is and what it isn't. The Chicago Bears are not signing Scotty Miller to be their #1 receiver. They are not paying him Deebo Samuel money or bringing him in to replace the production that DJ Moore provided over 3 seasons. At the top of the depth chart, as various beat reporters from Chicago have noted, several national outlets, including ESPN, floated the idea this offseason that the Bears' biggest roster hole was at the slot receiver position, with some even suggesting names like Deebo Samuel as a potential target. And Ben Johnson himself pushed back on that characterization, making clear that the focus was on adding depth and competition at the back end of the receiver room rather than overpaying for a high-end starting slot. This signing is exactly that philosophy in action. It's Ben Johnson saying, I like my top 3. I like Odunze, I like Burden, I like Raymond. What I need is professional competition behind them. What I need is a guy who can play on special teams, can be a gunner, can return kicks if necessary, can run routes in the slot on 4th down conversions, and can step into a game situation without completely falling apart. If one of my starters goes down, Scotty Miller is that guy. As multiple roster projection pieces have noted heading into rookie minicamp, the Bears carried only 9 wide receivers on their depth chart before this signing, and 4 of those 9 were essentially players with minimal to no real NFL game experience. That's not a depth chart. That's a hope and a prayer. Now they have a genuine professional at the back end of the room who has been in the league since 2019, who has won a Super Bowl ring, who has made plays on the biggest stages in the sport, and who has a direct relationship with 2 members of the coaching staff who understand exactly how to use his talents. At a 1-year deal, the financial commitment is minimal. The upside is real. The risk is essentially 0. And as reported by Yahoo Sports and GM Today, Miller will now enter what is expected to be a legitimate competition for the 5th or 6th receiver spot on the 53-man roster. with players like JP, Richardson, and Maurice Alexander providing the competition. Now let me give you Fave's full breakdown of where this signing leaves the Bears receiver room heading into training camp and the 2026 season. At the top, you've got Rome Odunze, third-year player, the #1 pick of the 2024 draft, still developing, but with enormous upside. And as the Windy City reports, heading into a critical year where the Bears will have to decide on his fifth-year option after the season. Odunze has been inconsistent. There have been stretches where he looks like a true number, one receiver, and there have been stretches where he's gone quiet for too long. Year 3 is the year we find out who Rome Odunze really is. Right alongside him is Luther Burden, the Ben Johnson draft pick who finished last year strong, and who, with Moore and Zashos gone, suddenly has a wide-open target share waiting for him. According to the pre-draft analysis and multiple Bears beat reporters, Burden's arrow is pointing straight up. Then you've got Caliph Raymond, a 10-year veteran who, as the Windy City points out, had his best football working under Ben Johnson in Detroit and signed with Chicago specifically to reunite with that offensive system. Then, Xavion Thomas, the third-round pick out of LSU, who is a field stretcher and gadget weapon, but who projects as a developmental piece in year 1 rather than a high-volume starting role. Then Jade Walker, a camp standout from last summer who scored a big touchdown against the Packers in December and who figures to be part of the rotation. And now, fighting for that 5th or 6th spot, Scotty Miller. 8 years in the league, Super Bowl ring, deep ball ability, special teams versatility, a coaching staff that knows him personally, a hometown crowd that will remember his name. That is a receiver room that now has legitimate professional depth on both ends. Fabe's full take? This is a smart football team making a smart football decision. Ben Johnson is not building this roster by accident. Every single move this offseason has had a logic to it, a purpose, a reason that connects back to the offensive system he is installing in Chicago. You trade Moore, you bring in Raymond, who ran this system in Detroit. You draft Thomas, you add a field-stretching gadget piece to give the defense different looks. You sign Miller, you add a proven deep ball separator with direct coaching connections who can immediately contribute on special teams and in-depth packages. This is how you build a real offense. Not by overpaying for splashy names, by being surgical, being intentional, and trusting your coaching staff's ability to develop players once they're in the building. And listen, the Bears are not a Super Bowl contender yet. Let's be honest about that. They are a young team in the middle of a genuine rebuild under a first-year head coach, but they are building something real. Caleb Williams is the franchise quarterback. The tight end room with Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet is genuinely excellent. The skill position pieces are coming together. And now, they've got a Super Bowl champion from the Chicagoland area who grew up rooting for this team, who gets to come home and fight for a roster spot on a team that has real ambitions for the future. That story writes itself. Here's the bottom line, Bears fans. Here's what Fave wants you to take away from all of this. The Scotty Miller signing is not going to make your highlight reel. It is not going to be the move that reporters look back on in February as the key moment that sent the Bears to the Super Bowl. But it is exactly the kind of move that separates franchises that are building correctly from franchises that are making it up as they go. You need experienced players at the back end of your roster. You need guys who have been in training camp, who know what a game week preparation looks like, who can step in when someone goes down without the offense missing a beat. And on top of all that practical stuff, you've now got a genuinely compelling human story playing out in front of a Chicago fan base that is starving for reasons to believe in this team again. A kid from Barrington who grew up in the shadow of Soldier Field, who became a Super Bowl champion with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, who spent a few years bouncing around the league trying to recapture that magic, and who finally got to come home. You can't write that stuff. Or maybe you can, but only if the football actually works out. And right now, with Ben Johnson on the sideline, Antoine Randall coaching the receivers, and Caleb Williams under center, there are legitimate reasons to believe the football is going to work out just fine in Chicago. Scotty Miller is not the main character of this story, but he's earned his role in it. And that, at 28 years old, with a Super Bowl ring in his pocket and his hometown crowd in the stands, might be more than enough. That is going to do it for today's episode of Favs. If you made it this far, you already know what time it is. Smash that like button right now, because the Bears content is only going to get more intense as we get closer to training camp. Drop a comment below. Do you think Scotty Miller makes the 53-man roster, or does he end up being a camp body that gets cut when things get real in August? I want to hear your takes. And if you haven't subscribed to Favs yet, what are you doing? We are your home for real NFL analysis, no filter, no corporate spin, and zero corporate chill. Subscribe right now. Hit the notification bell. Because when the next Bears move drops, and in this offseason, they have been dropping fast, we are going to be the first ones breaking it down for you. I'm Fave. This has been Fabs. We'll see you in the next one.